Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by, undoubtedly, Arwin, who's tried to get in during my intro. Let's just see if I'm right. Yes, of course I am. Let's admit him all. We are joined by Sleeping Warrior, Neil, Flatsoid, Elijah, Chocolate Saying, Brian's Logic, Arwin, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Full house.
It is.
Hello from New York.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Thank you for all trying to join during the intro. Really appreciate it. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
No, because it's not physical.
They claim it's physical. They claim it's a physical tangent point, don't they? And it blocks things. Hey, check it out. 10th Man put a picture in the pre-show of them claiming exactly that. They show a man on side profile with a tangent point, physical horizon claimed to be Earth curve. Physically getting in the way of stuff. And yeah, the horizon isn't physical. It's a non-physical location, right? Bad news for a glober.
That's so 2019, Nathan.
It is. It is. Yeah, they can't claim that since 2020, thanks to the Black Swan. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
No, at best we've disproven it.
Thanks, Mr. Sensible.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No. Mr. Sensible's mage debunked that too.
It did? I don't know.
It showed no rotation.
Oh, okay.
Can you turn your speakers down, Arwen? You were feeding back all yesterday, and I just kept on missing an opportunity to tell you to turn them down. Every time you speak, if someone else speaks, you get a load of feedback through your speakers. Sorry, Flatsoid and Arwen. Please feel free to continue, sorry.
Is it constant, or is this better?
Just turn down your speakers. Thank you, Arwen.
Yeah, sound propagates.
Axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
None.
I think we would have observed it by now if there was.
We do have direct evidence conflating or contradicting the assertion that we have axial rotation. Would you all like to hear all about it again? I'm going to punt this all week because it's so good. We have something called plimsoll lines on boats. If the Earth was turning, boats would have to rise out of the water as they got towards the equator. Boats actually sink into the water and appear to be more dense, as if there's a force of attraction pulling it towards the bed of the sea. And that's directly in contradiction to the assertion that centrifugal force should be pushing the boat up. Plimsoll lines prove that the Earth is not rotating.
You people in Discord, does anyone want to challenge that? While I sort out my chat.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go ahead and give it a shot.
Feel free. Is that John?
Centrifugal force would be pushing it out, and gravity would be pulling it in, so you'd have an inverse relationship between the equator and North Pole, so things would tend to get heavier as you travel away from the equator.
No, it's the other way around. If the Earth is rotating, the boat would be being pushed out towards the equator. But as it gets towards the North Pole or South Pole, it would appear not to be getting pushed out, and it would appear lower in the water, but yet in real life we see the opposite.
But gravity is affecting all points on Earth equally. So the spin of the Earth.
No, I'm sorry, sir. Gravity cannot affect anything because it's not an effect. It's not a cause; it's an effect only. So it can't be affecting anything. defined that way.
The unequal distribution of mass is affecting everything equally.
No, that's bending space-time, a mathematical conceptual medium that does not actually exist in the real world. It only exists in maths.
But I got you away from the plimsoll line. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, I was going to point that out. While waiting to. I'm glad you said that. Do you understand what you just said, Anthony?
Yeah, he said I got you away from the plimsoll line. That's all I wanted you to do. And I was just going to say, it didn't kill the point, though, did it? The plimsoll line still.
No. He didn't win the point, but he killed the point. I don't want to steal your thunder, John. Do you want to just explain what just happened? That was beautiful, by the way. You're very quickly becoming my favourite Discord participant. In fact, if you're on Skype, I'm going to add you to Master B because you're epic, mate. Can you just explain what's just happened to Sleeping Warrior, please?
If you wouldn't mind, would you? My kids are kind of fussing at me.
Doesn't have to win the point. He just has to get you away from your point so that it offers less validity at the point of conclusion. And that's what he successfully did. The reason I say he's one of my favourites because John used to be a baller till very, very recently, and he often disclaims how he used to cognitively process some of these arguments, and it's the most useful thing in the world hearing it from basically the horse's mouth, from the opponent's mouth. Go on.
Let me refute that claim that Nathan's just made. You said that he was successful at pulling me away from the point. That's only true if he successfully won the point by distraction. But as you're now pointing that out, and we all agree that there was a distraction technique, hopefully the audience can see that.
Oh, God. Can you tell that Anthony's involved in law? You slimy sucker. Yeah, technically, by way of what's just happened, obviously having to disclose it immediately renders the point useless. If Anthony jumps in and says, well, because we're discussing it, I therefore win. Yeah, well, of course. Bastard, how can I disagree with that?
It's true, it was an action technique, and it did distract away from the point, but only if you don't notice that was a distraction was he successful. But now that everybody sees it because you've pointed it out, we realise that I won.
He pointed it out. He pointed it out, though, didn't he? That's why I'm saying I like him so much, because he pointed it out. In other words, he's like, yeah, that's where he concedes his loss, ultimately speaking, isn't it? And he's conceded his loss to you to demonstrate it to the audience. And now we've laboured it a little bit. I'm really happy. I'll move on to the next question unless you've got something to add.
In real life, he would have did like Amin Ra and rage quit, and then the audience would have been sat there thinking, huh.
Can I just say, I would have killed his argument with the last thing he said.
Well, from that point, no, hold on.
I agree with you.
There's more to that. From that point, I would have just continued to talk about how unreasonable you are and how you don't understand.
Indeed.
Because I have you away from your point, and then I have you arguing with me about something else.
But the last thing you said, John, ruined your point, because you were claiming that the uneven distribution of mass gives an equal effect all over the globe, let's just say.
It isn't about the merits of the argument anymore. No, it's about
you're missing the point of this. It's not about.
Hold on, John. I think Sleeping Warrior is just about to agree with you and define the point again. Go ahead, Sleeping Warrior.
Brian's arguing a point on merit, but this isn't actually about merit anymore. This is about a tactical play that was being played that we've all admitted and accepted was there. So it's not about the merits of the argument anymore. John's showing that the ballers do use tactics to discombobulate arguments intentionally to deceive.
And just for Brian's benefit, what also happened was lots of people made lots of distractions and rumblings because they sensed you were going to actually make it on point again. Well, that can't be. No, Brian. You had to be rumpused and rumbled out of the conversation quickly in this scenario.
Yeah, it does seem that that's what happened, because what I was going to say is when John said that ruined his argument, because there can be no change from the north or south to the equator, but there is a change, and the plimsoll line proves this. Because he said it's an even effect all round.
Perfect segue for Sleeping Warrior to round out on. Do you want to just let? I was just going to say, Brian, do you want to just? Can you just let Sleeping Warrior round it out as it was his point originally? I'm sorry.
All right, I'll say it in a minute then. There's no worries.
You were just about to round it out beautifully, and I'm so sorry because you were. But Sleeping Warrior was the one that brought it up, so I'm hoping he'll round it out.
So the point is that if the question is there any evidence of axial rotation? And if there was evidence of axial rotation, boats would rise out of the water as they get towards the equator. We have a plimsoll line to measure it, but they don't. They sink into the water, and that goes against the idea of centrifugal force, which would be the effect of the axial rotation, and we don't see it. We see the opposite. So either there's an attractive force between masses that only works on the equator, or there is no axial rotation and something else is going on.
Perfect. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
I just wanted to ask. I actually wanted to ask Sleeping Warrior, would this also mean that they would not be in lockstep with Earth?
Would this also mean that what?
Because apparently they say everything is in lockstep. So if this happens, you wouldn't have lockstep.
I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure how that relates.
Because it would be that the Earth is turning fast, well, slower or faster than you. Or faster than, because you would have to increase speed or decrease speed to be able to get to your destination. The Athos effect is what you're trying to explain.
Yeah, remember what the Athos effect is. It's the claim that if a boat's traveling east to west, because of the gravitational effect of centrifugal force, like what they say is that the boat would appear to weigh more when it travels in one direction, and then appear to weigh less when it travels in the opposing direction. And that's the claim of Athos effect, because Wolfie did it with one of his little drug dealer
scales.
Yeah, and that was his claim. But the trouble is,
you have to mix up two things there, Anthony.
Yeah, but that was what he claimed was a demonstration of the Athos effect.
Well, he was saying that things were lighter at the equator.
Yeah, that's because that's the effect of the Athos effect. It changes.
It's not going left, east to west. That's a different thing.
There's two ways to do it. You can measure the weight at the equator, or you can observe the gravitational pull according to their gravitational gravimeters on boats if you're traveling east to west. And there's two ways you can do it. But the trouble with the claim is that if you look at the plimsoll line, you can demonstrate to yourself quite satisfactorily that the opposite is true, and therefore it does not support the assertion that the Earth is rotating. They just don't tell you about it.
Can I add to that? Am I able to share, Nathan?
I've got your screen presented, Adam. Feel free.
Yeah. I think this is what you're on about. This is not directly related, this presentation, but it talks about centrifugal force, and I was just in it. I was trying to just show a few bits. Well, this moves. There we go. So I've kind of like done a carousel and a ball earth and a mass of a person at 50 kilograms. And if we do the maths of this person on the equator spinning, it actually equates to a centrifugal force of 1.596 newtons. Now, it says a centrifugal force depends on the radius of rotation, which is different at the equator than, say, at the 45th latitude. So that centrifugal force will have a different magnitude on the boat, pulling it out of the water based on its mass, whereas the G force would be the same wherever you are on the globe. So I think that's what Anthony's describing, is that differential in the centrifugal. So if you sail from up here in North America down to the equator, then technically your boat should be lighter.
The other thing I just want to add,
more centrifugal force would be acting on the boat. G would be the same.
Can I add to it?
Yeah, just one more slide, Anthony. Go on, Adam.
But obviously, and I mean that was pretty much it. Is that the point you're making, that it's this centrifugal differential? Yeah. And like, so with regards to that, then, yeah, what I did here, look, just to show it would be significant, what I was comparing was the centrifugal force of a 50 kilogram person on a standard size carousel, and you get a force of 54 newtons. Now that same person on the equator does actually generate a a Newton value. It's only 1.596, but it is significant, and it would be less elsewhere. Look, that talks about the significance, the amount of it, which is only small, but it's still there. So it still has a magnitude.
Just to flip it round the other way, if it really was Earth rotation that was causing the centrifugal force or the centrifugal effect or whatever you want to, the pushing out of the boat at the equator, the plimsoll line wouldn't be called the plimsoll line. It would be called the centrifugal line or the Earth rotation line, because that would be the cause of the boat changing its position relative in the water. But obviously that isn't the cause. The cause is density, relative density. The plimsoll line really should be called the relative density disequilibrium line.
Cool. Anybody else got anything to add? And also, kudos, Brian, Adam, John, and Sleeping Warrior for that last little discussion. There was everything in that. A full detailed analysis of the claim of ETVOS effect. It pulled apart in detail the debate tactics that are thrown in and used, the baller perception, the lack of rebuttal. I had it all. Bravo. Thank you. Great answer. So, axial rotation. Anyone want to conclude or add anything else to that?
I will say that I was going to say more or less exactly what Adam said to John's last part of his argument, because G is always a constant and it's always the same everywhere, whereas the centrifugal force is going to be different at the equator. That is going to be stronger at the equator, and that is if on a globe, because that's the claim. But just to add, not that it matters, it doesn't matter. Just to add that my argument before with the ballers with this was that it was actually the reason that there was this effect of a weight difference at the equator, if it was there, was because of a less dense air, because there's more sun. The equator gets more sunlight and more heat from the sun than any other part of the world. So it's going to have more rising air, less dense air. So that's more a little bit of a lack of density in the air could cause a difference on the scales in a very small amount.
Cool.
Which is exactly what we see in real world.
What we would see if it was true. I mean, when they say weight, they are automatically invoking gravity. So that's the whole purpose of this particular magic trick. But we also incorporated gravity into that discussion. So it's just epic. It also leads into this super chat from James Richard. Observation, isolation, variation, manipulation, and control. These are part of the scientific method. Why does gravity not meet any of them, yet still called science? They hijack science. They've utilised it to purvey their just so stories onto the general public. It's an outrage, really. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
You missed gravity off.
We just did gravity. That was part and parcel. It was all wrapped up in one big fat sandwich.
Oh.
What is the sun?
No idea.
I only came here for the gravity point.
You can bugger off then. Go home.
Is it
You
tangible?
can't have
Hold
an
on,
actual
I'll
distance
take the hint.
to
Hold
an
on.
apparition.
Let's just ask the question again. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No, they can't even define it, Nathan. You get any baller to define gravity, and they can't. If they can get the definition out in current physics to do with bendy space-time, get them to apply it to Newton's apple, and then it starts getting just batshit crazy. That's why they can't define it, because they know that they're cornered with it. They discombobulate that argument like a motherfucker, because they need to. Anybody that gets confused by gravity, their operation is complete. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to confuse it, just like we did with just that conversation with John just then.
But
Yeah,
they can
what-
gather
what-
the scientific
hold on.
math for it, though.
Yeah, just get John's
Right.
response, and then we'll go. Hold on. Just get John's response, and then we'll go to Arwen. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of gravity, though, isn't it? Like, you take the things that disprove your model, and then you create this imaginary thing that turns those disproofs into proofs. And then you argue about whether it exists. You don't ever deal with the real problem.
Correct. Exactly. That's why it's called discombobulation. If you discombobulate something that much that everyone ends up confused, then the status quo gets maintained and then gravity's back being a force again. Even though it's literally in the definition that is considered to be the current science, everyone gets confused. It's very simple. We know what it's defined as in current physics. We don't have to agree. We don't have to disagree. We just need to cite it and then get them to explain it by application with any experiment where an apple falls from a tree, for example. They can't do it. But you're right, John. That's what they must do. They must make it that confusing that everybody gets confused by it, and that's what and it's successful. Everyone does get confused by it. Look at the Witsit conversation with Brian the other day. Witsit was trying to confuse the topic so much by saying that there was an incoherent dielectric acceleration, and in the end, when he speaks it that fast and he makes that many points in a short, rapid-fire succession, it just sounds like it's sophistry. Now, when you suggest that it's sophistry, you get accused of not understanding. But the reality is, if there is a dielectric, electric magnet, whatever he calls it, a dielectric, incoherent dielectric acceleration that causes matter to accelerate, he's got to be able to demonstrate it. And the problem is, you can only do it with little tiny styrofoam balls. Well, if you do that with anything bigger than that and it does not cause the acceleration, then guess what? It does not accelerate that matter, does it? So it might do it to microscopically small stuff, but it doesn't do it to anything beyond that because it's not a strong enough force. Does that mean that it causes mass to accelerate? No, it can only cause.
I'm sorry, I got kind of stuck
Roy-
on the word. Can I respond, please?
Yes,
for the
go
first
ahead,
time,
Darwin. You've been waiting in the wings for a
I
while.
got
Go
kind
ahead.
of stuck up on the word incoherent there. Incoherent, you say? That doesn't sound very scientific if it's incoherent.
It's incoherent. It means not following an order. That's what it means.
Sorry, but he's claim everything is has got electromagnetic force to it, which is false. That alone already debunks his argument. So
Wait a second. So science has different meanings for words?
It does if you discombobulate in the argument. Yes.
No. In science, when you're defining things, it's very, very specific.
Good.
Yeah, the problem is,
I think that's a really important point.
And he says everything is electrostatic.
Go ahead, Adam.
It was just to request Flatsoid to just maybe elaborate on that point. I've seen it running around Master B, because I think it is crucial to their theory is that everything is subject to these things. So could you elaborate, Flatsoid, why you think everything isn't, or demonstrate?
well, he says everything is electron. That's not true. I mean, you get ferrometric and you get diametric. Everything. I mean, you get materials that repel magnetics. You get materials that have no magnetic at all. So his actual argument is that everything has got magnetic properties that pull it down, and that's why I see the acceleration, which is totally false. I mean,
Okay. Right.
you actually have to add.
Sorry.
You actually have
Just-
to add the magnetic structure to it. That's what he was doing with his demonstration. He had to add the electricity to give his demonstration actual oomph. If he didn't add it, it would have done nothing.
Well,
So it's man-made.
If he would want to prove he was right about the assertion that everything is electrostatics, that's fine. Very manipulated. Show that helium balloon going down, go boom, boom, through some kind of electrostatic process, and I might entertain the idea. How about that?
But
Be
gas doesn't
careful.
get affected
I
by
just
this.
want to back Arwin. Yeah. But just when you say balloon, I'm sure you could probably introduce enough electrostatic force into a given material that you could contain gas into, or contain helium in, that would ordinarily go up, and then you could attract that balloon with the force. So just be careful. We're talking about specifically gas. So it's like you say balloon because it's just a nice,
Right.
easy example that you can visualize. But then people start putting balloons in vacuums and going, oh, look, it's at the bottom. It's like, no. The second it breaches the tensile strength of that balloon, it's going to fill the volume. Like it filled the balloon.
Right.
Anyway.
You can,
But I also, if I may, sorry.
formula, can't you? Rub it on your head, and it can defy gravity by just sticking it to the wall with electrostatic. So balloons, and I don't think is, and that's
I
not
wanted to address that
reversing
specifically.
polarity, is it? That's just using electrostatics to stick it to the wall. It's not reversing.
But that's not what I meant, though. That's specifically not what I meant. I meant actually it falling down in regular air because of an electrostatic reversal that is just encompassing the entire room. I don't mean literally electrostatically, locally sticking it to a wall. That's not what I meant. I mean actually causing the entire room to reverse this electrostatic process that's supposedly influencing everything, causing the balloon of helium to travel a distance downward in the air.
That's my point, Arwin. That even if you did it onto a balloon, because I can easily affect the dynamics of a balloon by just rubbing it on my head. Just because I did it in a room with the balloon wouldn't necessarily imply any reversal of polarity. It would just imply effect via electrostatics.
That's why Brian was asking him to demonstrate it real world, because in the real world we don't see objects changing polarity and flipping towards the sky and then coming back down again due to an abundance of negatively charged ions or particles caused by a Van de Graaff generator equivalent. We don't see that. So when Brian was asking him to demonstrate it, and he can't demonstrate it unless he uses a Van de Graaff generator, he's quite right to point out that that's a false equivalence, but Witsit wouldn't accept that. But that's true, it is a false equivalence.
Well, what I'd like to say about it is we're arguing about this thing that is not clearly, this thing that isn't clearly defined, and there's been plenty ample time. I'm not going to lay this on Austin's door. I'm going to lay it on Bob's door. It's been plenty ample time for an experiment that adheres to the scientific method that proves it or disproves it.
Exactly.
Why are we arguing about this?
Hold on, Brian. Hello, Brian. You've got to be more specific. What's it?
Okay, sorry. There you go. Like, why are we arguing about this dielectric acceleration, right? That is claimed to affect everything in the world and has a supposed downward rise.
Hold on, stop. Now I'm already confused. Now we're getting somewhere. Hold on. Just everyone lay off Brian for a second. So, an effect of an effect. I'm a bit confused. Is this an effect that we're trying to figure out the cause of? Is it actually an effect? Because if so, where are we observing it? That's the first thing I need to establish. So what is it, and where are we going to observe it? That's the first thing we need to establish.
But that's the problem. It's not being clearly defined. All I could get out of it was that there is this constant electrostatic effect that's affecting everything.
And where is that observed? If it's affecting everything, is it observed everywhere always?
Generator. Or if you rub a balloon on your head and stick it to the wall.
Is that the examples they gave?
Well, that's it. I don't know anywhere where you can actually. I honestly, Nathan, don't know anywhere. And I've searched my brain. I can't think of anywhere where I observe this. Outside of maybe rubbing a cat or a dog, you get a static charge off your hand.
There is one time that we do see that in real world, and it's when you see lightning. You see that there is a build-up of charge potential. It gets to a point where it can jump the gap, and then it either goes from the ground into the sky or from the sky down to the ground. We do see it every now and again, but only in a thunderstorm. Normal day-to-day living, we don't see it.
Yeah, but lightning is plasma, and the official layout of what causes lightning is a bit dodgy. I kind of think they don't really know.
That's fine.
It's just, all we need is an observed.
We do sometimes see that flow of energy, but rarely.
All we need is an observed phenomenon. That would be an effect. Anthony, can you turn your line down a bit? We just need an effect to study. That's it. Now, I've had a few examples, but in isolation, if you want to say lightning, I'd say, okay, let's figure out the cause of lightning. But that's not what I'm hearing. I'm also hearing this is affecting everything always. It's like ether. Pete Shea in the chat yesterday saying ether this and ether that. And I'm like, show it me. It's everywhere. I'm like, what? Like love? Show it me. They can't.
Exactly, Nathan. That's the exact problem.
I think what's happening is we need to take a step back and go backwards and look at what's really happening. Like John did before with the evidence of axial rotation, he deliberately swerved the conversation with the distraction. This is the same thing. Witsit's deliberately, I think he's deliberately doing it because I think he's influenced too much by other people that push this like it's a religion.
No need.
He's pushed an argument that has discombobulated the argument so that we're not looking at the bigger picture and we're focusing on the minutiae. Well, the minutiae is minutiae. We're still looking for the overall overriding cause and effect, and there isn't one. So there is, but it's not what they say it is. So if you realize that this is an attempt to distract the conversation away from the actual science, then that puts it into context for everybody.
Yeah, look, his claim was relative density is the main cause, but it's not the only cause. That's what his actual claim was. He's saying the acceleration is due to the magnetic.
Well,
Which is totally wrong.
isn't it? Because you can apply science to that. I did that with mine. I made the claim that if I changed the density of the medium, the egg would move. And I did change the density of the medium, and the egg did move. But if he says that actually that was correlative and not causative, because he did say, Brian asked him, do you agree that he performed a scientific experiment? And his answer was, well, he didn't manipulate his causative agent. Well, I did. So if he's saying that I did not, that means he's saying that it's a correlation only. Okay, that's a claim. You demonstrate using the same test that I did, but just manipulate the electrostatic, incoherent dielectric volcanic eruption that you think's causing the acceleration, and show that it can actually do it. Because if you can't show that it does, you've got to accept your null hypothesis.
All he's doing is just pushing gravity with another word. That's all.
Well, or discombobulating the argument to deliberately.
But did he not introduce an electric charge to his thing and cause something to change as well?
Yeah, to create the electric charge.
Well, you have to put the solution of the salt into the water. What's the difference?
No.
The difference is
Sorry.
The
Hold on, just one at a time.
difference
Hold on. I didn't hear either of you, Flatsoid or Sleeping Warrior, one at a time.
Can I say something? I'm saying the difference is with Riley's experiment, he was actually manipulating the density. With his demonstration, he wasn't manipulating any electric store. He actually created electric force, you understand? He didn't change anything, he created it.
That was Brian's point, and he whistled past it. He said that Brian whistled past the graveyard on his point, but Brian's point was precise. He was adding a load of negatively charged ions to manipulate or to add to the environment that it was in. Now, that he wants that to believe, to make you think that that causes an acceleration, which it does. But Brian then said, well, demonstrate it real world, not in a lab. Where do we see it? Where do we see anything change in its polarity and start suddenly going off into the sky to then turn back around and come back to Earth because of a load of negatively charged ions, a cloud of negatively charged ions? Where does that happen? And it doesn't. So it's a false equivalence. Brian was correct.
That's the difference, Elijah. Relative density equilibrium has loads and loads and loads of observable effects, whereas what they're claiming, there's no observable effect. They're basically claiming that at the background behind everything, there's this electrostatic effect that is the reason for everything. That's all I can get out of it.
Can I ask a question based on that
I don't
debate?
know.
Yeah, okay. He said it was negligible at best, and he said relative density was the most. But what he was stressing was very negligible. But then that one part, he showed those steel balls all clumped up together. But steel balls normally don't clump up together. So was those balls magnetized to begin with?
No, he said he would not.
No, the point of that is to show that the difference between incoherent and coherent magnetic masses, and they're larger and incoherent. Even if you've got a huge ball of magnets and they're incoherent, they're a very, very, very weak force. The other interesting thing with that is that when it becomes very incoherent, there is no repelling effect. So they were the points of interest, I think, that are of demonstration in those things. That's why it comes back to Flatsoid saying, because they're saying that everything in nature follows these laws, whether they become incoherent, and it's a bit based, isn't it, in terms of his viewpoint of magnetics and how things work. But that's the fundamental principle, that within that is that overall incoherent but still having an attractive but no longer a repellent force, the driving factor, not behind how relative density works, because this sits as an overreaching reason or order of orientation. So why heavier things go one way and lighter things, etc. So it's a definition of, or a postulation as to why the ordering occurs in that manner. It's supplementary, not an alternative to density. But again, it's leading to causation, which I don't think we can, unless you could start to demonstrate some of the things that we've described there, where we could reverse polarities. And unless you can do that, it's hard to attribute it as a cause, isn't it?
Well, but you need an effect first.
My biggest problem with all of this is the use of the word downward.
Yeah.
Because things don't just move down.
Yeah,
Correct.
this is. Hold on, let me just.
So-
Well said, Chocolate. Exactly. This. It seems to me that they're trying to assert something as a description of something that applies always, which is a law of nature. By comparison, you've got second law of thermodynamics describing entropy increase. Well, they're trying to describe the fact that there is a naturally observable, incoherent magnetic force that permeates everything. Well, that would be, in terms of science, I suppose you could call it a constant. But then there's this sidestep towards asserting a causal relationship with a downward vector. It's like, well, these two things seem non-related in the respect that, well, the directionality is subjective based on the fact that it's relative to you, and the constant that they might or might not be claiming might be eloquently described as a natural law one day, but it's not necessarily causative, if that's even a word. It's not that you would say entropy causes things. It's like, no, when gas expands, it's demonstrating by description an entropy increase. That's how we describe that process. But that description of the process isn't the cause. Whereas it seems in this instance, just to reiterate what Chocolate said, you've got two different things going on. Something that could be a law of nature, incoherent magnetism. Pff, why not? I don't care. But either way, it's not necessarily going to be ever asserted as a cause of something else, in this case down. Because if it is an ever-permeating force, it's not going to be causally related to something that is just occurring in nature, in this case, relative density disequilibrium, when something pushed out of equilibrium.
Well, can I just put it to bed up to a point, not that I want to stop talking about it, I'm just saying, during the debate, I read out a thing about what's known as the homosphere and the heterosphere. Now, I know the word sphere is in there, but the reason I read that out, I know it's a mainstream thing, but they're saying once you go up high enough above where convection is causing all the gases to and causing different temperatures and pressures and all the rest of it, and causing the gases to be homogeneous. The mainstream claim is that the gases then start to align themselves due to their densities up higher when there isn't this effect of weather, that the more dense gases will tend to be lower and the less dense gases will tend to be higher. And they claim that it's because of gravity. But I showed with that little citation thing I had of that guy who has some company, or is the manager of a company, where he said that they have to roll the canisters before they send them out, the canisters with different gases in there of different molecular weights, because when they're sitting in their factory, what happens is they're sitting they're sitting idly right, and they're at a kind of a constant temperature. So what happens is the more dense gases tend to go down towards the bottom, and the less dense gases tend to go up towards the top. Now, that shows that relative density equilibrium is happening within gases, right, that are left static and at a constant temperature. Electricity and magnetism has no effect whatsoever on gases. It can't have, because it wouldn't work. So it just has no effect on gases. So their whole claim is out the window. I just wanted to throw it out.
I tend to agree with what you've just cited there, but what I would be careful with is the quality of the citation. It's still anecdotal evidence. The question is, why is mainstream science not on with this? Because if the anecdotal evidence is true, and I believe that that is true, then we have a problem, don't we? We have a problem with mainstream science not acknowledging that the separation of gases by its own molecular density is actually a thing.
Is that something new?
Remember Good Times for All, I think it was. Was it Good Times for All that did the thing where he had the gas canister and he heated up the bottom of it and it caused a pressure gradient within it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was Good Times for All.
Yeah, exactly. And so what he's doing is making some gases in there less dense than others. So he's also creating a density gradient within there.
No,
He's creating
no, that's not a settling of a gradient caused by separation of the different types of gases in there. That was caused by thermal agitation, which using PV-nRT showed that, first of all, it shows a differential was possible, but it also shows that everything then follows the law of entropy as it equates afterwards. That's why it was so hard for us to do. I had one end in a vat of ice, on one end with a blowtorch, but it was to show the principle that you can generate a differential in the thing. But that wasn't any separation of the different molecules. It was just excitation at one end, making the molecules move faster than the molecules at the other end, which will create a pressure differential.
Yeah, but I wasn't claiming that there was a differential in the different gases within there. It didn't matter if just the one gas. My point was, by making the gases warmer, you ended up making them less dense, and they rose. Hot air rises. Hot air rises, cold air falls. You know what I mean? That's my point. And that's when it's just air.
Yeah, and that's why.
See, but that's my problem right there. Like, that's a thing we know, right? Warm air rises, colder air is,
Thanks.
because it's less dense. So, I mean, the fact that we have anything rising tells me that there is no downward force that's causing acceleration.
Yeah, we see, but Chocolate, if they're going to claim something's pulling it down, they're saying that they're overcoming entropy because they're trying to say something that's moving in all vectors is pulled to one vector now. So they're actually claiming it's an overcome of entropy, and that alone is a violation.
I'd like to hear what Elijah has to say, because he kind of was a little bit not too happy with some of the things earlier. So Elijah, if you know something that we don't know.
I was happy with Adam's follow-up. Sorry.
I say 10th. Do you want to add something 10th?
I've got another one that I'm still not.
Just 1 second, Adam. 10th's been trying to get a word in. Hold on, just 1 sec. Do you want to add something 10th?
Yes. Was the claim that everything in our nature has electrical properties and it causes upward downward?
Yeah, he said it causes a bias.
Okay. How about wood? Because we know that's not a conductor of electricity.
He would argue that wood's got, even though it's not magnetic, he would argue that it still has some magnetic properties, even if it has none.
It would have some.
It's still electrostatically viable, 10th.
Well, that don't make any sense.
10th, this was my whole argument. That's why I said everything has diametric properties, but you don't have everything that's going to repel and attract. Not everything is magnetic. It's impossible.
Okay, can I just get...
Could I bring up a point?
In a moment you can. I think Arwin and Adam are both waiting to add something. Or maybe you got yours out already, Arwin, maybe?
Well, it's kind of like moved on now, but...
Right, fine, let's not... Adam, feel free.
Oh, sure.
Go on, Arwin.
No, I'll just wait after a half hour you guys have finished.
Okay, brilliant. Right.
I just don't want it to move off topic. That's all. Go ahead, Adam.
It was only a little I'm still struggling with this concept of gases segregating due to relative density. They don't have a density. The only way in which you could get something is in consideration of an ideal gas. When we talk about the air we breathe, is considered an ideal gas, even though it is a mixture. Now, within that, even within the temperature, the molecules are different sizes, shapes, and there will be slight variations in their speed and the way in which collisions send them different ways because of their sizes and shapes. So there could be, in a non-agitated system, that you could get some states more available to others, which could cause some thing in a very contained system. But I think in any other, certainly natural system, there's no way in which gases would ever order with respect to, I think the term is not relevant to a gas, but in order in terms of relative density.
Perfect. Arwin, and then
can I have a follow-up?
Well, got Elijah, was it, that wanted to add something, or was it John from Discord? I forget who.
Oh yeah, I did. I'll add a little bit. What I didn't understand was the downward bias. That's the part that I don't understand. Like downward bias and what?
Where do we see it?
where's that upward? I mean, we have things that go upward, but I didn't hear anything about.
That's exactly
They need
my
that
problem.
downward. They're gonna
5 people.
constantly
I'm
come with that
desperately trying to
downward.
keep control of the conversation so we can hear everybody. Just don't jump in on top of everyone's conversation. I'm trying to keep control. Right. Do you want to respond to that? Was it Sleeping Warrior or Flatzoid? I couldn't tell who's trying to reply.
I don't know. Somebody was speaking over your background noise. I think it might have been Elijah. That was the point that Brian was saying. He was saying, where do we see this downward flow of energy in the atmosphere in the real world? Because the way he's describing it, it sounds like he's describing the flow of energy out of the sky like rain, but it's energy flow. And we don't see that. And if we do see that, then we need to see evidence of it. But he thinks everything that falls towards the ground is that downwards acceleration. So he's saying if everything falls to the ground, most things fall to the ground, then flow of energy. We do see everything fall to the ground, so therefore there must be a flow of energy. It's affirming the consequence.
Okay. Adam, just wait 1 second.
I agree with that.
Just 1 second. If you can all pop yourselves on mute in G+, just 1 sec. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that this is a complicated topic, and that, like, when I was a Glober, I watched Arwen and Anthony argue about relative density from the other side of the fence, and I could appreciate that they kept it civil. So, where this is a complicated topic, there may be something to be flushed out from what Whitsitt and those others believe, but I don't think that they're being intentionally deceitful.
Indeed. Arwen and then 10th, who's been waiting a while.
I just want to clarify what he said. Like, we kept it simple or we kept it civil? Because I don't think either one are true.
Civil.
Right.
Hold on.
We kept it very civil.
Right, hold on.
We
Everyone,
got really pissed off at one another.
Hold on, Owen, sorry. Right, got 10th waiting in the wings. Just 1 second. Hold on, just 1 second. So, yeah, he said neither were true, according to Arwen. Just, I don't know if that reached the airwaves. But Sleeping Warrior, then 10th, who's been waiting for an eternity.
To be fair, back then, me and Arwen were actually... We were arguing the same point, but we were using different words because we were talking about something that doesn't exist because there's no science for what we're describing. We later coined the phrase this relative density disequilibrium, but we essentially were arguing the same point. Yeah, it wasn't civil, but it was civil enough to be able to conclude the point. And the conclusion, if I remember correctly, was unless you can demonstrate that it's true, then it's just a story. I think that was the conclusion that we had at the time.
Well, my conclusion was that gravity is an aberration, and later it's just a reification fallacy now in a more scientific method related terminology, but it is an aberration. It's a highly suggestible concept that's just very appealing, yet it is very elusive when you try to prove anything about it empirically, and that's what made me call it an aberration and basically concede to relative density.
Perfect. Just hold on. Sorry, Sleeping Warrior. We're 10th, and then Adam's also been waiting a while. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to go back to my. I want to go back to my wood, because what I observe in nature is if I throw a stick for my dog to chase, I picked it up through it. It lands on the dirt until my dog gets it. Now, if I take that same stick and I throw it in a pond, it's going to float until the water fully soaks it. Then it's going to sink. Where's this bias?
Right. So this is where I'm not defending, but my understanding isn't. They're not suggesting a downward bias. It's on the molecular level that they're suggesting the ordering. So just as much as something goes one way, because the two are interacting, the other thing goes the other way. So it's an equal opposite interaction when you're looking at density disequilibrium playing out for me. You're not having, even with just density disequilibrium, you're not having the thing go down. It's that way, and the medium goes the other way, and so one's going up and one's going down, relative to each other. Yeah, but there's not one thing that's just forcing its way through the other thing with a force down through it. That's not, in my understanding, in either model how it's postulated.
Did say there was a downward bias.
Yeah, I heard the downward bias. That's why I'm using this example, because all the time that stick is also in the air. So when it's on the ground, it's because it's denser than the air. Then when I throw it in the pond,
No, we naturally see that.
Excuse me.
God, can you just let him finish?
So-
Can people
so-
just let other people finish for once? For fuck's sake.
Sorry,
So
I
then-
was playing a clip. I'm going to play a clip next. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I was going to
So then when I
say
throw it
that
in the-
came from Sleeping Warrior.
I don't mind. All right. So then when I throw it in the water, there's air above it, water below it. So the water is more dense until the water soaks into it and equalizes with it.
I'm
Let
just
me
going
just
to.
play.
I'm just sorry to. Sorry
Soaks
to.
into it. That doesn't happen.
I'm sorry to interject,
Of
but can I
course
just
it
point
does.
out,
No, it
like,
doesn't.
just
You
one
haven't
second
seen
before we get into the
sticks at
debate.
bottom
Oh
of a
God,
riverbed?
hello. Before we get into the back and forth, can I just point out how acutely tuned to the sound of a fundamentalist zealot voice Arwin was, and everybody else for that matter. As soon as we heard it, the reaction is, "Shut up, Fundy! Stop interrupting!"
And it was actually Witsit.
Oh God,
Can I
I'm
just say
so sorry, Witsit. I'm
I
so
wasn't
sorry.
addressing the recording. I was
hold
addressing
on.
everybody
I'm
in
sorry.
general
I just
because
need to
everybody's being very interruptive. It's
Yeah,
annoying.
like you right
It's
now,
hard to
Arwin. Thank
follow
you.
What people are saying.
Yeah, that's because you're interrupting me. Arwin, you're interrupting me right now.
Witsit. Gents, can I just play the clip of Witsit so we can hear what he actually says? Because if we can establish that he does say that there is a downward bias, then we can argue about whether or not we see that. And that was Brian's counter. So let's see what Witsit says. It's only going to take a couple of seconds, so just bear with me.
No, we naturally see that everything that's a compilation of matter is electrostatic. We naturally see things have a downward bias down to the inertial plane or the dielectric plane. So you would have to specify contention here. Are you saying?
So he does say that there is a downward bias towards the inertial plane. Anybody?
and everything's electric and magnetic.
Yeah.
Well, he states that we see it as well. That's not true.
No, it's not true. But Adam was saying that he wanted to clarify. He didn't think that there was he did say that there was a downward bias. That is his position. He thinks that voltage or current is flowing out the sky like rain.
Go on, Adam.
Like I said, if you apply that on the level they're talking about, there's just as much an upward bias to the thing that we would consider less dense. Yeah.
I agree.
Interaction of play at that molecular level, yeah, and it's I would say he's misdescribing it, but my understanding is, again, it's not a force; it's an orientation. I think they're described.
I would agree. I would say if things go down, and we're going to call that downward bias, then is there an upward bias for the things that go up? Because things go up too.
Everything's got an equal and opposite reaction, right?
That's my whole problem with this. And this is way before Witsit. This was Bob with the downward acceleration. And because he sees acceleration, he thinks there has to be some sort of a force.
But there's not always
bias is kind of depressing, you know.
But there's not always acceleration. There's only acceleration in a controlled environment, like
But
a
hold on,
vacuum,
what
which
goes
is
up?
not natural.
Go on, Neil. Say again. Hold
Tell
on.
me something that goes up.
Gas.
Gases.
That's it. We can't get
Leaves
anything else?
leaves at the bottom of a river or wherever else.
Beach ball at the bottom of a pool. Like,
Yeah, but
I mean,
now you're in a different medium.
yeah, that's the whole point.
So
That's the whole point, man.
How about a water repellent, really light rock?
Oh, hold on,
Oh my
Neil.
God.
Do you understand that that's the point? Because if I got a beach ball and I'm just holding it in the air, right, and I drop it, what does it do?
Yeah, I understand that, but they have more things coming down than we got going up. That's
So-
all I'm saying.
So there's more things going up
Hold on.
or going down? Okay. What does
I
that
don't
mean?
think so.
Things still go up.
Hold on. What are you watching?
Depending on what they
Hold
are
on.
and what
Just one second.
the medium they're in.
What are you watching going down, Neil? Because generally speaking, I'm looking around me right now, and I don't see anything moving down.
I just seen a leaf fall from the tree. It's going down. It's not going up.
And
All we
yet
got is
millions of-
helium. Can't
and
we
we've
get
already
anything
said-
else to go up?
Look,
Only things that are less
Smoke-
dense than air.
Can I
Smoke goes up.
address that? in the world we're in, we live in gas. So everything, all liquids and solids are more dense than gas. So that we see more stuff, we just see more stuff going down. We don't see the stuff going up. You can't see helium going up, but it does. It can. Warm air, we don't see warm air rising, but it does. And we don't see cold air.
Well,
Go on, Elijah, then I'm going to shout out some
fair,
super chats.
you know, water is just there, right? Like water is just at the beach, but we know there's a lot of vapor coming from that water going up.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's less dense than the gases of air.
Exactly, you just don't see them. So you just observe the physical, solid nature of things going down more than you do the invisible nature of the gas, equally physical, going up. Just going to do a few shout-outs. So, James Richard, thank you so much. You've been smashing the super chat hard the last few days, my friends. So I really, really appreciate all of your support. But I'll read out your last super chat. It was obviously during the time we were talking about the sun. Nathan, would you agree that if they knew what the sun was, that they would be able to make one? Reverse engineering, in brackets, question mark. I don't know, because I don't know what they'd find out it to be. So I don't know if, you know, once they figure out what it was, if that would be capable of reproduction. I just don't know. That's not a question I can answer, unfortunately. There's also been a few people join as channel members. So shout out to Paraplegic Bear for joining as a channel member, and also MacGyver Institute of Ninja Technology. Welcome to Nathan Oakley as a channel member. Thank you, everybody, for supporting the channel. That's not me rounding out, by the way.
Well, right, so hold on. No, now it's my turn. I've waited half an hour for the unrelated subject that I wanted to bring in through the live show, and I will, without interruption of everybody.
Just go.
So we're going to move away from the sun?
Yes, yes. I've waited for half an hour to bring this up, and I will bring this up right now, right? So, yesterday in chat, I brought something up in the Nathan Oakley chat, and Nathan was there. It's a concept. I brought it up on my show today. I want everybody to hear about it, not immediately reply halfway through what I'm talking about. Just listen, right? So I figured out something about the vomit comet and the apparent neutralization of relative density of, for example, water or a rock that in the dive might seem to flow, right? Well, it's falling. And then I realized something. What if you brought a helium balloon inside of the vomit comet at the same time? Would it float just like the rock, just like the water? No, it would not, because it's still less dense than the entire medium that is all accelerating downwards. And it instead would very in your face, shoot right to the back with great violence and great urge, as the rock and the water would seem to float in the diving plane. The helium balloon would not do that thing. It would shoot to the back with great violence and maybe burst open when it hit it.
And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you tuned in live. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. As I say, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to today's Discord and Google panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!